There are some hobbies on the internet that are full of strange, obsessive people, expensive, esoteric boutique equipment, and all kinds of weird rabbit holes you could research basically forever. Anyway, welcome to the world of headphones. If you're new to audio, this is the place for you. There's a whole lot to know, and I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible, point you in the right directions to get you started. If you're looking into getting a pair of headphones, there's a few things you need to know to get on the right path. The first of that is your use case. Before you look into any videos or anything, you need to know, am I going to be listening in a loud environment? Do I listen a lot at my computer at home? Do I want to just kick back and relax? Am I listening on an airplane? A lot of these factors will determine what kind of headphone you actually need. There's open back headphones, there's closed back headphones, there's wireless headphones. Wireless tend to not sound quite as good. Closed backs are known for their isolation, generally good bass performance. Open backs are generally known for superior overall sound quality, better detail, a more open sound, wider staging being how wide the sound is off your head. You wouldn't want to use an open back headphone on an airplane or on a bus or in a room with a loud piece of equipment. But if you're somewhere quiet, well, it just makes sense. Another factor to consider is amplification. Well, that might sound like a lot right off the bat, but amps are something that a lot of headphones need. In fact, your cell phone, if it still has a headphone jack on it, or that little dongle, well, that dongle is an amplifier. The headphone jack on your computer is an amplifier. It's something designed to power your headphones, and some headphones need a lot more power than others. Just like a dedicated graphics card for a gaming PC, a dedicated amplifier will outperform the integrated amplifiers that are generally built into computers. And a lot of amps are known for their strange and interesting colorations to the sound, though you can find things perfectly transparent as well. It just depends on what you're after, but it's good to know that most headphones really do require some sort of amplifier when you're getting deeper and deeper into this hobby. When picking a headphone, a lot of reviews will tell you if you need an amp or not, but they'll also go through a lot of strange terminology that probably won't make sense right off the bat. So here's a few things to help kind of brush you up on what you might need to know. Bright is one of the most commonly used terms in audio. It's when those sounds in the treble, the those really high-pitched noises, they can be grating. They can be too much. Bright is an elevation of your treble or your high-frequency sounds. Dark being the exact opposite of that. Dark is when you get a recess in your high-frequency sounds, getting a little bit more of a muffled sound. Turns into, if you see what I mean. Warm and cold is on the opposite end of the spectrum. Warmth has to do with your mid-range and your bass, a bit more of a soothing, engulfing sound that's not very harsh, but also can lend to being a bit thicker or more rich. Those low frequencies, not necessarily punchy deep bass, but just the low frequencies that kind of round out the music, well, that's the areas that can be defined as warmth. Cold being the lack of those frequencies, something that is also sometimes defined as thin sounding. Soundstage, once again, is the size of the sound produced by the headphone, how wide and how far away things sound. And imaging is where things are placed within that sound. If you're someone who plays a lot of video games, soundstage and imaging are two things that are probably going to matter to you a lot. The soundstage, well, that makes things more immersive, and imaging, well, that tells you where things are coming from. Luckily, there is data to help us understand some of these sounds. You see, just like on an EQ, you can pull up something we call a frequency response graph. And actually, I think one of the guys at the lab is probably best to explain this. Let's cut over to Resolve.
So what are headphone measurements and why are they important? And also, why are they commonly featured in reviews, or at least increasingly so these days? Well, in the simplest possible terms, headphone measurements allow you to generally predict how a headphone is going to sound before you buy it. And when I say predict, I mean they give you a visual representation of the sound signature that a headphone has. Ideally, you'll be able to compare headphone measurements, and we're talking here, of course, about frequency response among different headphones to get a sense of which ones you're going to prefer. If you're comparing two headphones and you want to get a sense of which one has more bass or which one has more treble, headphone measurements allow you to do that. And when you look a little bit more closely and do a little bit more analysis of headphone measurements, they can also indicate the relative tonal balance that a given headphone has. So that's the relationship for the tuning between bass, mids, and treble, and all the various different fine-grained regions in between. We have to be careful though and not overinflate headphone measurements because unfortunately they're not a substitute for actually putting them on your head. In order to get the complete picture of how a headphone sounds, we still have to do that. There's no substitute for that because you have to remember that your ears are unique, as is your head shape, as is basically everything about you. And so just because a headphone performs a certain way on a measurement rig and looks a certain way on a graph, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hear it that way. But with that in mind, if you're brand new to this, one of the best ways that you can actually make use of headphone measurements is take a very zoomed out approach to this, a wide analysis, and go, okay, is this going to sound bad for what I like? You can very easily take a look at a graph and ask yourself, does this have the kind of bass that I want? Does this have the kind of treble that I want? Does this have the kind of mid-range presentation that I want? And if things are very wrong, a graph will be able to tell you that.
There you have it. Data collection as a whole is pretty important over here on the Headphone Show, so we try to include it in as many videos and articles as possible. If you really want to go down the rabbit hole on measurements, I'll put a link in the video description to a video all about measurements. It really is actually interesting, and the more you learn about the science behind it, the more you realize, wow, this goes deep. But a general word of advice is to not take everything too seriously. Enjoy what you're going to enjoy, try things, and leading to our next bit, get active in the community. We have a forum linked in the video description where you can talk to tons and tons of people, but there's also tons of other forums, Discord groups, social media, and even meets. That is definitely something you want to check out. If you're looking at making a headphone purchase, well, it's not a bad idea if you've never heard a high-end headphone before to go to a CanJam event or an audio meet and listen to lots of things. Now, it's a bit harder to judge things on a noisy show floor, so take it all with a grain of salt, but you can get a general idea for what a lot of different sound characteristics sound like in things from a few $100s up to even tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. And yeah, this hobby actually does get that expensive at times, which circles to the next point. Expensive isn't always better. Price does not directly correlate with sound quality. There are some things you can get that are cheap that are amazing. There's some things you can get that are expensive that are amazing. But just because something costs more, it doesn't mean that it's better than what you already have. HiFi and Sundara is a great example. That headphone, that's relatively affordable compared to lots of things that are way more expensive, things in the $1,000 plus range. And that Sundara might be a better fit for you than something that costs 4, 5, 6 times as much. But on the flip side of that, a headphone that costs $1,600 might be the only thing in the world that fits your particular case. I mean, you might have very, very specific preferences. Or you might be a psychopath like me who just ends up with an entire wall of headphones and I can never pick which one I want to use. There's another side of that though, and that's having a collection helps you keep up with a hedonic treadmill. That's the fact that our bodies and our brains generally like to adapt to things. When you first get a headphone, you might be really excited by it, but as time goes on, you might get more and more bored of the sound. Well, having a couple things in your collection to switch back and forth between keeps them fresh. When you put on a headphone after not wearing it for a month, well, it feels like a new headphone again. The pads might not be as stiff as when they first came in, but you have to readapt to that sound to get used to it again. That is one thing that's kept a lot of people I know from continuously buying more and more headphones, and has kept them from getting tired of things that they have and enjoy. It's also nice to have contrast, so you have something that is focused and flat and another thing that's bassy and fun, or maybe you have another headphone that you use on the go. It's just too much to condense into one video, but this is the best I could do at trying to make everything as simple as humanly possible. And you're probably sitting here going, oh God, what have I gotten into? If there's any particular subject in this video you'd like for me to expand on, let me know in the comments because I'd love to continue to follow it up as time goes on. But in general, audio is a hobby you should enjoy. Find things that you like, engage in the community with other people who are passionate just like you are, and I'm sure you'll have a great time. And one last bit of advice, don't rush the journey. Enjoy going through some headphones that might be less expensive, work your way up to nicer things, and I'm pretty sure you'll appreciate them more when you get there. I mean, there's some people I know who could just jump right in and get the nicest thing and appreciate it from day one, but man, my Aria Stealth, I love that headphone, and I love it a lot more because I went through a couple of crappy headphones that were cheap before I got to that one. Just something to think on. Anyway, that's gonna wrap up today's video. If you liked it, please leave a like down below, a comment letting me know what you wanna see in the future. If you wanna get active at the forums, you can, link the video description. And like I said, there's a lot of helpful resources down there, articles to read, other videos to watch, that'll help get you going in the right direction. Until the next one, guys. Peace.